Hello, St. Parish, and welcome to this week's Quick Things. As you may have noted in the little slide at the beginning, there's a lot of things to talk about. So at the risk of losing you all, I won't address any of them at length, but just to cover several important areas of interest and of importance to our parish as we move along. You may have noticed in the cover slide, again, kind of a curious collection of items. Well, those are our DWHTY wristbands, which, if you've been paying attention to the homily over the last several weeks, there's been at least a fleeting reference to that message, DWHTY. It comes from the gospel we heard on the second Sunday of Ordinary Time from John's Gospel at the wedding feast of Cana. They're out of wine. No one knows what to do. And Mary says to the servants, do whatever he tells you, DWHTY, which, as I mentioned in a following homily, a succeeding homily a week or so later, is the bishop's motto for Cardinal Sean Dolan or Cardinal Sean O'Malley of Boston, do whatever he tells you. So kind of reminiscence of the WWJD wristbands of several years ago. So kind of a new take on that, DWHTY. So kind of a little gimmick, just have a little fun, but also with a good reminder. It's something that people ask us about. Someone already was wearing one, and a friend playing cards says, DWHTY, what is that about? And so she told her what it was about, thinking that the he was her husband, but it's not he, it's Jesus, of course. Do whatever he, Jesus, tells you. But I suppose husbands could play that however they want, but it's meant to be Jesus. Anyway, these will be in baskets at Mass this weekend, so we can all help to pique a little curiosity for a while at least. DWHTY, do whatever he tells you. There are children's sizes and adults, and there are a few larger sized wristbands as well. Our main focus right now in terms of events is anticipating and preparing for Ash Wednesday. So we'll worship on Ash Wednesday, Liturgy of the Word or Mass with ashes at 7 a.m., 12:15 p.m., 5 p.m., and 6:30 p.m. Lots of liturgies throughout the day, kind of speaking to the importance of our coming together and beginning Lent together. And I'll talk more about that next week. But just to get that on our radar screens, it is the only day Lent begins. And so if we want to get a good beginning to Lent, and again, I think it's important that we honor Lent as individuals in our day-to-day prayer, but also that there's an important and an ancient communal dimension to Lent. And kind of anticipating Lent, Deacon Irv observed at our staff meeting this week that the readings in these Sundays leading up to Lent are really challenging and kind of put forward a powerful message for us as we anticipate Lent. Well, let me tell you, the Gospels of Lent don't get any, I don't want to say burdensome. They're full of wonder and grace. Challenging messages, but also affirming messages for us. So lots of things to look forward to as we move into Lent. And we'll share more information about that in upcoming Quick Things, as well as in a newsletter that I hope will get out to parishioners next week, maybe even before next week's Quick Things. I want to put in another plug for book club during Lent. I think we'll probably meet twice, maybe a few weeks in and then a few weeks later, to talk about this new book by Father Greg Boyle, The Whole Language. I started reading it this past week. I was on vacation, and I'll talk about that in a moment. No photos or anything like that from my vacation. But it really is a challenging collection of stories and understandings that he puts forth. Lots to ponder, and lots for folks to talk about. So now would be the time to order that from Yankee Bookstore downtown, Barnes & Noble, or the usual online sources. The Whole Language by Father Greg Boyle, and I'll share at a later time where that title comes from. And I have a hunch, whether you're in the book club or not, you may be hearing a little bit about the whole language in a homily or two during Lent. But I look forward to inviting some folks into that conversation to read and to discuss and kind of pick apart a little bit what Father Greg Boyle puts forward in this intriguing book, spiritual resource, The Whole Language. And then also, you didn't get a chance to watch it last week, the conversation with Andrew Halverson and Jeremy Clement from Ellis Construction, the folks who are doing the reconstruction, reimagining of our church. I encourage you to take some time to watch it, the link to that discussion, just the discussion, not all the quick things, announcements, or anything else. That's included with the quick things email. You can also find it at our website on the reimagining page. Some really, I think, helpful information about the project itself, but also some interesting information about Ellis Construction, their origins, an important role in the construction of the cathedral and the baptistry at our cathedral in La Crosse, as well as the 1985-86 renovation of our church here. So, and now, of course, the important work that they're doing in reimagining the church as we, as we re-envision things. So I hope you'll give some time to that. A few folks have brought forth some questions prompted by that conversation, and I'll get to those next week. But I hope if you haven't had a chance to see the conversation, that you would. For several people have observed that it really helped bring the whole thing together, a little more perspective. And it's been a while since we talked about it back at the parish meetings in the spring and summer. So it was a nice refresher for folks. Those are the real announcements. I mentioned that I was on vacation. I was in Mexico. And one of the fun parts about vacation is going to Mass at different places where you're not on for anything. You're there hoping to just be part of the assembly and give thanks and praise to God. So in Mexico, of course, Mass was in Spanish, which is fine. I mean, I'm familiar with the Mass enough that if the presider and the participants are speaking Spanish, I know what they're saying. But there are just a couple of things that were interesting in terms of the liturgy. First of all, it was held in this open air church. Now it had a roof, so it wasn't intense sunshine down on us. So it wasn't quite Mass in the grass, but it was kind of close, and there was a lot of wind blowing. So it felt that way a little bit. But just a beautiful kind of open air chapel or church, and so that was really neat. One thing that was unfortunate, and another thing that was very affirming or intriguing. What was missing? So there's music. I couldn't understand the preaching. I'll grant you that in terms of the language barrier. There was music. There seemed to be a good spirit and participation on the part of the assembly. But what there never was silence. There was a constant movement from one thing to another, so much so that as the presider began the collect, the opening prayer, so much as he opened his arms, the readers began racing to the ambo to proclaim the reading. So so that as soon as the prayer ended and we were beginning to sit down, they could begin the reading. So no silence between those two things, or just to collect our thoughts and focus as we anticipated hearing the readings. As the priest began to preach his homily, the altar servers began to prepare the altar for the Eucharistic prayer. So again, there was really we're always moving on to the next thing, and not the silence that is really so important. In addition to what is spoken and sung, that silence can speak as profoundly as the words or the music when we come to worship. And so we want to give time always to think about what we've heard, to think about what we're praying for, to think about what our needs are. So when like at the beginning of Mass, and I suggest, let us collect the needs of prayer we bring to our worship today. The collect is the name for the opening prayer. That's the official title, the Roman Missal, the big book behind me. That's what it calls that prayer, the collect. We're collecting the prayers of the assembly who are there. And we don't say it out loud, but we can each for ourselves identify what our needs are. We're collecting that as a community in that opening prayer. But to allow a little silence then after that introduction, so we can consider what our needs and prayers are that we bring to that worship today. Then the other neat thing they did, and I've suggested this from time to time, and it hasn't really taken off that well, is at the sign of peace, they offer just a slight bow to one another. It's a very ancient monastic practice. It's something different from our normal secular ways of greeting one another. So even shaking hands, it's something that we just do in the course of any daily event, or we used to. Some of us are back into shaking hands. Some of us aren't quite sure we're ready to do that yet. But it's different from that. It's something that is almost exclusive to a more religious or monastic or church kind of setting, where we bow to the altar during the Mass. We bow as we prepare to receive the body and blood of Christ. And then in this custom, to bow to one another, recognizing the presence of Christ in the other person, which is what we're doing during the sign of peace. The peace of Christ be with you. Christ is with you. You are Christ. There's a lot that bow can mean. So I was impressed. I was intrigued wondering how that custom developed there. But noticing that it was very widespread. I mean, very few people were not honoring one another in that way. So I just throw that out there again. It's very appropriate. It's a good and noble way of our honoring Christ and one another and sharing the sign of peace, just to offer a slight bow. Different than waving, which is another thing we do just, in secular day-to-day experience, or shaking hands. Those are all fine. But this is something that could be unique to our experience of worship. Anyway, I experienced it there and just thought it was interesting. I wanted to share that. Then a couple other things, I don't know what the COVID situation is in Mexico where I was, but the custom at this parish, everyone was wearing masks. They had, what was most interesting, and I'm not encouraging that, I'm just observing that. They had hand sanitizer stations so that you didn't touch anything. You pushed a pedal with your foot, and that emitted a little jet of hand sanitizer in your hand. They had those at the doors, and then they had them in the communion procession so that you'd sanitize your hands before entering and then before going up to communion. So they a little creative. I had not seen that. I'm surprised we haven't had anybody trying to sell us that. We had they had holy water fonts that were being sold at one time, where I think it was that you put your hand under a thing like you do with hand sanitizer, and it emitted some holy water that you could bless yourself with as you entered church. And I wonder how many people bought into that. Hopefully not too many. It seemed like a clever idea, but also almost like an April Fool's joke in some way as well. But anyway, this was a kind of a practical way of offering hand sanitizer for the folks who gathered for worship. So an interesting experience, and just always good to be with other people from other communities and to see how they worship and to share that worship with them. Some very, very positive and encouraging and exciting news, but also some very sad and discouraging news in terms of our new neighbors. Let me deal with the discouraging news first, which probably is not news to most of you. The husband, father of one of the refugee families that have moved to Warsaw from Afghanistan was arrested last week, charges of 4th-degree sexual assault. We'll see where that goes. He has been charged. Obviously, that's just the beginning of the process. But certainly not excusing what has been alleged to have happened in any way. It is inexcusable, as has been acknowledged by the police chief, by the mayor of Warsaw, by the people from ECDC and New Beginnings, the organizations that have helped to coordinate the welcoming of refugees in Warsaw. So there is no excusing it, but there's also no point in overplaying it in terms of something beyond that one person and his offense or alleged offense. We don't want to indict an entire community of people because of one person's mistake or one person's violation. I don't want to make light of it by saying it was a mistake, one person's violation. We want to give, I would hope, others the benefit of the doubt and not fall into pointing fingers or saying things like, well, this is what happens, or we knew this is what it was going to be. Certainly sexual assault is not something that's exclusive to Afghanis. Unfortunately, it's quite widespread. I don't want to say common, but it's not uncommon. And so we don't want to make light of it, but we also don't want to cast a blanket too far over lots of other people and who have nothing to do with this. So this offense, what happened here, has no connection to our families, the families that we have welcomed. They know the family, but they are not friends of the family. They really have no ongoing relationship with this family. So I guess we just want to keep that in mind, and not make it guilt by association, or guilt by shared nationality or something like that, and to continue to be supportive and welcoming of the families who join us here in Wausau. And just we'll see where the process goes. There could be very severe consequences, not just for the father, but for the entire family in terms of their ability to stay in Wausau or the United States, and then what that means for them going home. And so even just to think of the mother and children of this man and what this could mean for them, the consequences of that. But again, my point in bringing this up is that it is shocking. It's violent. It's offensive. We can all come up with words to speak to what has been alleged. But again, it would also be equally wrong, violent, offensive to cast this blanket, this web of guilt by nationality, whatever you want to call it, over lots of other people, including our family. So I would hope that we wouldn't be doing that, and just want to offer that encouragement, especially, and maybe even to challenge some folks if we hear that kind of conversation going on around the community. So the good news is that a second refugee family has been welcomed by members of our parish. So if you recall, I've spoken of this in earlier quick things, that the experience of our first group has gone so well that a second group thought, well, we could give this a try, and have done it. So you have to do more than just say, we'll give it a try. You commit to doing that. And they welcomed a second refugee family last Thursday, I believe. Thursday night they arrived, and are doing well. It's a husband and wife, and I'm looking here for my notes while I'm talking to you, a husband and wife and a 7-year-old son. And they are settling in, getting established. They speak the same language as our first Afghan refugee family. So that is helpful. Hopefully that'll develop some connections there. I think I heard as well that they're well educated. Both the husband and the wife have had more, I don't want to say middle class jobs or whatever, but they both have educations, and had significant positions when they were living in Afghanistan. So the good news is they're here, they are acclimating well, and we are grateful for our second group of parishioners who are helping to make that happen, and for our community who have been so generous in sharing items. A reminder of the register of needs for these families. It's on our website, stwausau.org/welcome. There's a link with that in the quick things as well, and that's updated for February. They may even have updated it since February began, so please give a look to that. Then the other good news regarding our new neighbors is that Faisal, the husband, the father in our family of 4, began work this week. He is working at Great Lakes Cheese, and he is having a wonderful beginning. His employers have been very encouraging and have done a lot to welcome him and get him established there, arranging transportation. They are just very eager and almost grateful, I guess, to have an employee who is very excited and et cetera about working there. And Faisal reports that the employees have been great to him, great to work with. And so he is enjoying his work and appreciates this opportunity to help get himself established for himself as he and his family settle into Wausau. So that's the good news. A new family has joined us. The other family that have been here now for a little over a month are doing well. The boys are in school, and and Fazil is enjoying his new job. So that is good news for our neighbors and for us. And I would hope that if we see these folks around town, as others have with them, that we would make the effort to welcome them to Wausau as they continue to make this their home. And then finally, I just want to say a word about Blessed James Miller. So Sunday, February 14th, February 13th was the what would normally, if it was on a weekday, would be the feast or the memorial of Blessed James Miller. So he was a Christian brother from Stevens Point, or eastern Portage County. I've spoken of him before. A few parishioners and a larger group of us went down to his beatification in Guatemala, in Huehuetenango, Guatemala, in 2019, just before COVID came in early 2020. And so we participated in his beatification, which was a wonderful, once in a lifetime kind of event. And so then his memorial, as we have saints and blesseds feast celebrated on various dates, his is February 13th, which was Sunday. We don't recognize that in any dramatic way because of the Sunday takes precedence over that. But I just want to call attention to him and offer a prayer as we conclude the quick things. But I want to show you this icon, which some people don't like, be that as it may. When you commission art, you get what the artist gives you. And this was commissioned by the Diocese of La Crosse. Bishop Burke was the bishop at the time. And there was an annual Brother James Miller event. So I'm thinking this was around 2000, maybe a little earlier than that. And we commissioned a Franciscan, Robert Lentz, who has done a lot of icons of various more contemporary figures, but also ancient figures as well. And so we commissioned him to do an icon of Blessed James Miller. So the original is gigantic, and it can't even get far enough away to show you how big it is. And it hangs in the front entranceway at Pacelli High School in Stevens Point, which is significant because that's where James Miller, as a 14, 15-year-old, spent his first year of high school and met the Christian brothers who were teaching there. And in his 1 year of experience, determined that he wanted to pursue, or at least see, what life as a Christian brother would be. And so he eventually became a Christian brother, professed vows with that community. Their primary emphasis is school, is teaching, but he also knew he wanted to work in the missions, and so spent considerable time in Nicaragua and Guatemala. And there's a great story to tell about Blessed James Miller, and I won't do all of that here. I wanted mainly to talk about this icon which Robert Lentz created. So there were a couple things. Bishop Burke wanted, his only request, as he graciously commissioned this icon, his only request was that James Miller be in his Christian brother's habit. Even though there are very few pictures of Blessed James Miller or Brother James Miller in a Christian brother's habit, but he is in one in this icon. In fact, several of the icons that people like better, he's dressed like a farmer with bib overalls and stuff. In any case, icons are filled with symbolism, and so there is here. He's wearing the Christian brother's habit, which is the black robe with these kind of white lapel pieces there that kind of hang down there. In contemporary habits, they're plastic. I think at one time they were probably cloth-covered pieces of cardboard. So he's wearing the habit. He's wearing a wrench because he was kind of known as Brother Fix-It when there were odd jobs. James Miller loved, better than administration and teaching, which he knew were important, he also loved just fixing things. And so the pipe wrench is indicative of that. But then in the other arm are the books that would have been so important to his work as a teacher. And then what I love best is the background, which is the multicolored woven cloth that is so common in Central America, especially in Guatemala and Nicaragua, where he did so much of his work. And so I appreciate all those pieces coming together. Oh, the other thing that many people don't like is that he kind of has a double chin or a triple chin. And yeah, we often don't like to call attention to those kinds of things. But if you look at pictures, he did in later years have that, and he talked about it at some point that he needed to lose a little weight. The other thing that Bishop Burke didn't like at the time was the halo, because he was not officially recognized by the church in any way at that time. Well, Robert Lentz, in his iconography and writing this icon, was being a bit, it was being a bit prophetic, because the day came a couple of years ago when James Miller was beatified and became Blessed James Miller, and then the halo is more than appropriate. So he earned his halo, or the church finally acknowledged that he was worthy of his halo. The people of Huehuetenango in Guatemala had long before beatified or canonized him and had honored his legacy. So they had already put a halo behind his head, and now the church has done that as well. So I just wanted to share this icon with you. It hangs in my office. If you're ever at Pacelli High School for any reason, I'm not sure why you would be, in Stevens Point, be sure to check out the icon, the original icon of Blessed James Miller. And my thinking about him on vacation on Sunday prompted me to toy with the idea, and again, I need to pursue this. There's a custom of putting relics of saints, of blesseds, holy people, of placing relics under the altar in our churches. And I don't know how you do that or how you go about getting a relic, but I might pursue that. And maybe we have a pastoral council meeting this weekend to talk about that. One idea that occurred to me was maybe relics of Blessed James Miller, who is from central Wisconsin, so a native of central Wisconsin. You can go to his grave. It's a 40-minute drive away from here. And maybe also a relic of, I mean, when we're talking about a relic, it might be a piece of their clothes, it might be a hair, a piece of bone, or something like that. So a relic of Blessed James Miller, and then maybe a relic of Blessed Solanus Casey, who is also from our diocese. The two only the two people of our diocese, only two who have been beatified in any way, recognized officially by the church. So that might be something neat to look at and see how that works, or if that's possible. At one time, they used to put them in a stone and set it into the altar. Like that would be carved out of the altar. They don't do that anymore. They put it under the altar. I'm not sure why that change was made, but that's what they do now. So something that we'll talk about that some more and see if we pursue that. And that's something we can always do at a later date as well. But it's also a way to honor those stories and continue to keep those significant holy figures before us as we celebrate their presence in the community of saints, and the hopefully the courage that they give us by their intercession and by their witness. So with that in mind, I would like to close with a prayer that is prayed to call upon the intercession of Blessed James Miller, and to encourage that one day he might be canonized a saint as well. But it's more importantly a prayer recognizing his witness and encouraging us in honoring that by our holy lives. So we pray, Blessed James Miller, you heard God's call to become a brother of the Christian schools, and so became a sign of faith to youth in the United States and in Central America. You placed your life and your trust in divine providence, and for spreading the faith, merited the crown of martyrdom. In a world that denies the dignity of the human person, obtain for us from divine providence an ever-increasing love of God and our neighbor, especially the poor and oppressed. Obtain for us also the favor we are now asking for our needs and our parish, and the grace and strength to be witnesses to Christ's love to all. Amen.